The Shurangama Sutra, Volume 3, 21. Moreover, Ananda, why do I say that the 12 places are basically the wonderful nature of true suchness, the treasury of the Tathagata? Ananda, look again at the trees and the Jeta grove, and the river and pools. What do you think? Do these things come into being because the forms arise, and thus the eyes see them, or because the eyes produce the attributes of form? Ananda, if the eyes were to produce the attributes of forms, then when the eyes looked at empty space, the form should be obliterated. Since the attributes of forms would then be absent, who would be able to recognize emptiness? The same principle applied to emptiness. If, moreover, forms arose and the eyes saw them, then seeing should perish upon looking at space which has no form. Once seeing perished, everything would disappear, and then who would be able to recognize either emptiness or form? From this you should understand that neither seeing nor form nor emptiness can be located, and thus the two places of form and seeing are empty and false. Fundamentally, their natures cannot be attributed to either causes and conditions or spontaneity. Ananda, listen again to the drum being beaten in the Jeta garden when the food is ready. The assembly gathers as the bell is struck. The sounds of the bell and the drum follow one another in succession. What do you think? Do these things come into existence because the sound arrives in the vicinity of the ear, or because the ear's hearing extends to the source of the sound? Ananda, once again, if the sound arrived in the vicinity of the ear, then that would be like when I go on alms round to the city of Shravasti, I am no longer in the Jeta grove. And so, if the sound definitely arrived in the vicinity of Ananda's ear, then neither Maudgayayana nor Kashyapa would hear it, much less the 1,250 Shramanas, who, upon hearing the sound of the bell, come to the dining hall at the same time. Again, if the ear arrived in the vicinity of the sound, that would be like when I returned to the Jeta grove. I am no longer in the city of Shravasti. When you hear the sound of the drum, your hearing would already have gone to the place where the drum was being beaten. Thus, when the bell pealed, you could not hear that sound. Even the less those of the elephants, horses, cattle, sheep, and all the other various sounds around you. However, without coming or going, there would be no hearing. From this you should understand that neither hearing nor sound can be located, and thus the two places of hearing and sound are empty and false. Fundamentally, their natures cannot be attributed to either causes and conditions or spontaneity. Moreover, Ananda, you smell the chandana in this censer. When one particle of this incense is lit, it can be smelled simultaneously through 10 miles around the city of Shravasti. What do you think? Is this fragrance produced from the chandana wood? Is it produced in your nose, or does it arise within emptiness? Ananda, once again, if the fragrance were produced from your nose, what is said to be produced from the nose should come forth from the nose. Your nose is not chandana, so how can your nose have the fragrance of chandana? When you say you smell a fragrance, it should enter your nose. Smelling is not defined as the nose emitting fragrance. If it were produced from within emptiness, since the nature of emptiness is eternal and unchanging, the fragrance should be constantly present. Why should the presence of the fragrance be contingent on the burning of dry wood in the censer? If it were produced from the wood, since the nature of this incense is such that it gives off smoke when it is burned, then when the nose smelled it, the nose should be filled with smoke, which does not happen. The smoke rises into the air, and before it has reached the distance, how can the fragrance already be smelled at a distance of more than 10 miles? From this you should understand that neither the fragrance nor the nose's smelling can be located, and thus the two places of smelling and fragrance are empty and false. Fundamentally, their natures cannot be attributed to either causes and conditions or spontaneity. Ananda, twice every day, you take up your bowl along with the rest of the assembly, and among what you receive may be fine-tasting foods such as curds, buttermilk, and clarified butter. What do you think? Are these flavors produced from emptiness? Do they come forth from the tongue, or does the food produce them? Ananda, once again, if the flavors came from your tongue, since you only have one tongue in your mouth, when that tongue had already tasted the flavor of curds, then it would not change if it encountered some dark rock candy. If it did not change, then it could not be said to be aware of tastes. Yet if it did change, since the tongue is not made up of many substances, how could one tongue know so many tastes? If the tastes were produced from the food, since food does not have consciousness, how could it know tastes? Moreover, if the food itself were to recognize them, that would be the same as someone else eating. Then what connection would that have with what is called your recognition of tastes? If the tastes were produced in emptiness, then when you eat emptiness, what flavor does it have? Suppose that emptiness had the flavor of salt. Then since your tongue was salty, your face should also be salty, and likewise everyone in the world would be like fish in the sea. Since you would be constantly influenced by salt, you would never know tastelessness. Yet if you did not recognize tastelessness, you could not be aware of the saltiness either. You would not know anything at all. How could that be called taste? From this you should understand that neither the flavors nor the tongue's tasting can be located, and thus the two places of tasting and flavors are empty and false. Fundamentally, their natures cannot be attributed to either causes and conditions or spontaneity. Ananda, early every morning, you rub your head with your hand. What do you think? When the sensation of rubbing occurs, what does the touching? Does the head or the hand do the touching? If the ability to touch were in the hand, then the head should have no knowledge of it. How could we then say that the head was touched? If it were in the head, then the hand would be useless. And how could it be said to have touched? If each had the ability to touch, then you, Ananda, should have two bodies. If between the head and the hand only one touch took place, then the hand and the head would be one substance. Ananda, your mind is always conditioned by the three qualities of good, bad, and indeterminate, which produce patterns of dharmas. Are these dharmas produced by the mind, or do they have a special place apart from the mind? Ananda, if they were the mind, the dharmas would not be its defiling objects. Since they would not be conditions of the mind, how could you say that they had a location? If they were to have a special place apart from the mind, then would the dharmas themselves be able to know? If they had a sense of knowing, they would be called a mind. Being something other than you and yet not defiling objects, they would be someone else's mind. Being the same as you, they would be your own mind. But how could your mind exist apart from you?